Hi there, I'm Wendy McCallum, burnout and alcohol coach and wellness expert, and you're listening to Bite Size Balance, where everyday extraordinary women share their stories, expertise, and wisdom, all in the name of lifting each other up and creating a better life by design. Whether it's wellness, career, relationships, food, alcohol, mindfulness, hormones, or parenting, we talk about all things women's balance. If your life looks great on paper, but it still feels like something's missing, you're in the right place. Welcome to Bite Size Balance.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to season 2 of Bite Size Balance. This is episode 1 of the season 2 lineup, and I am joined by my favorite co-host, Dr. Sarah Bailey, naturopathic doctor. Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Glad to be back.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you as my season 2 first guest, because you were my very first guest in season 1. And since then you have become a regular contributor / co-host with me, which I just love. And of course, we've been up to all kinds of things together in terms of group programming for women around hormones, which we're going to talk about a little bit today, but just felt like the right person to have on the first show, since I feel like this podcast is almost like our shared child, I think, in some ways. So we're recording this episode in the middle of August.
Mm-hmm.
So how's your summer been going?
Well, it's been pretty good. I mean, my kids have been home a lot, so I've had to really make a conscious effort to carve out time for myself. And so I'm really having to put into practice the stuff that I preach every day around self-care and making sure that I'm looking after myself. So that's been good. It's been challenging sometimes not to go crazy with kids around. There's just not as many camps, and they're getting older, so they're not as interested in camps. And
yeah, I remember that is a weird transition. You're reminding me of that, because how old are your kids again?
11 and 13, and they don't have jobs.
I know.
So I would love it if they had a job.
I know. They don't want to go to. They don't want to go to camp. They want no part of camp. But they also are not really old enough to be working. And so it's very awkward, because you also can't leave them all on their own for forever. They're just not
for a whole day. They'd kill each other by the time.
No, I totally remember that. It's very awkward. The good news is it changes, but then when it changes, boy, does it change. I've got 2 17-year-olds who I've barely seen all summer, who really want nothing to do with me, and who are both working pretty much full time. And one of them is driving. So it will shift. But the pendulum will swing very far the other way.
Yeah, I actually see that in your life sometimes when we're hanging out on the couch drinking our non-alcoholic gin and tonics.
Right? Oh, this is our new thing. We have so much to tell you guys. We
bonded over so many things.
We have all of these new little rituals that we've created through what started out as a really purely professional partnership on this podcast has blossomed into quite a fun friendship. And so Sarah and I have lots of stuff to share with you, one of which is that we have discovered a delicious non-alcoholic gin that makes a lovely G&T. And we've also discovered that we have I don't know if we should admit this on the podcast.
I don't know. I've never said this out loud to anybody.
Can you admit it? You know exactly.
Go ahead. No, that's fine. Yeah, okay. You go ahead. This is all about vulnerability in my.
We have discovered that we have a shared love for really terrible. I guess we'll call it like reality relationship shows. So we together have watched. We've watched the entirety of Love. Was it Love Island? Is that the one we watched?
Oh no, there was Too Hot to Handle.
Too Hot to Handle.
After you had your vaccine and couldn't get off the couch.
Oh, that's what happened. Yeah. I got my defense. It was very innocent how I got pulled into this thing, and then I was the bad influence that pulled Sarah in, because I had my second vaccine for COVID, and I got so sick, really kind of unexpectedly, even though other people were getting sick. I was like, oh, I'm not going to get sick, and then I just went down the next day. I had to cancel all my clients, and I found myself on the couch and I couldn't get up. And Netflix has this feature, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, where it will just start the next episode if you don't do anything. And so I ended up somehow watching the pilot of Too Hot to Handle, and then basically most of the rest of the series. And at some point I pulled Sarah into it. She got addicted to it. And then that's led to us exploring the world of reality.
But only, I have to say, like, as a caveat, only together. Like, I am not spending my time at home watching Love Island or The Bachelorette. Not that there's anything wrong with that if you like that, but I just, this is a new world to me, and I feel a little bit of like it's a dirty little secret somehow, but definitely it's a thing we do together.
Very true. Yeah, but I'm also not cheating on you. So I still have, we made the joint decision one night to purchase a season of, is it The Bachelor?
It's some Bachelor one.
No, Bachelor in Paradise. We purchased a season of Bachelor in Paradise. We've only watched a couple of episodes, but I'm not cheating on you. I'm saving it for the next time we get together. And we have also discovered gin. I'm going to tell you what the type of gin is. It's called Lyres, Lyre. Apostrophe S. And it is, I've tried a bunch of non-alcoholic gins, and there are many that are good out there, but this one is, I think, my favorite. And Sarah and I did a taste test one night, like a blind taste test with another. This is what it's come to, people. This is
where we have fun in the summer.
This is MOVID, as I call it. So menopause blended with COVID has brought so many delights into my life, including Sarah, but also non-alcoholic gin. So we did a blind taste testing one night, and Sarah, you preferred the Lyres as well, I think. So
yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, so that's something that you did this summer. You explored the world of reality relationship TV and non-alcoholic spirits with me, which was fun because Sarah is not alcohol free, but she enjoys a non-alcoholic. You also don't drink very often, because I think you've said in other podcasts, because of the impact, well, for a bunch of reasons, probably you were ever a big drinker, but the impact that it has on your own symptoms of your own hormonal symptoms, right?
Oh yeah. I would say I'm completely alcohol free now, but I didn't make a choice to be alcohol free for any other reason other than if I even have half of an ounce of red wine, which would be my choice in the winter, I'm up all night,
right?
5 or 6 hot flashes. It doesn't matter how well managed it is in the rest of my life. It's a real trigger for me. So it's like a histamine response. It's a heat. It's poor sleep. It's agitation, and it's just, I really got to the point where it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I just, and I look at my husband drinks wine, and I look at, and I think, oh, if I just want a little taste. Yeah. And even that taste sort of, I just think this is crazy. What.
Now you have an alternative, because I'm introducing you to the world of non-alcoholic alcohol. Oh, you also tried the Groovy Dry Secco.
That was pretty good. Yeah.
Which you enjoyed. You actually said, so that was, again, we were watching Bachelor in Paradise when you enjoyed that. And you said that it felt, you were like, I don't know why, but I feel like, I almost feel a little bit like I've had an alcoholic beverage.
Yes. It was so interesting that it had this effect of, it was like it tapped into the relaxation mode, to the stress response mode that I'd had, that I associated with having a drink after the kids went to bed, or having alcohol with friends. It completely there must be some feedback response from just the taste that actually put my brain into a little bit of calm. But then, because it wasn't actually alcohol, I wasn't up all night.
Right. And I actually think that probably part of that is probably explained by the way dopamine works, in that dopamine is, it's triggered by the substance itself. So that's the neurochemical that basically signals wanting in our brain. And when we drink alcohol, we get a little dopamine rush. Same thing with sugar and, other things. But we know that that actually dopamine also surges before the actual tasting or the alcohol. It's the anticipation, and it's because of the circumstances that are always associated. So it's kind of like the ritual piece of it. And I think with you, what you were experiencing, and it's fascinating to me that you had that response to it, because it just validated something that I say all the time to my clients when I'm working with women who are trying to change their relationship with alcohol, which is that a whole huge piece of this is tied up in the ritual of it. It's this is the thing that I do for myself. This is how I take a break. This is how I signal to the rest of my family that I'm now off limits. I'm done. Mom is off duty or whatever. And when we, we know that just like the opening of the bottle and the pouring of the drink causes a feeling of relaxation for most people. And for me, the ritual of using the glass, like I poured it for you in a nice wine glass and it was chilled and we were on the couch, and it sounds like we were having a romantic interlude ourselves. We were not that there's anything wrong with that, but to be clear, we were hanging out at my cottage one night after, I think we just recorded a coaching call for the WTF program that we ran last month. Anyway, and so it was kind of like the setting was really very relaxing as well. It was the end of the day and we had no obligations and we were away. So I think that the ritual piece of it too probably caused a little bit of a dopamine rush and kind of a feeling of euphoria that goes along with that. So
I think it was permission to relax, because I had gone a long time without any alcohol. And then after I had children, as soon as they were in bed, and I thought, right, I've done my job. They're safe. They're in bed. I'm good to go. And then I would have a glass of wine. And so I think that, and I drank more after my kids were born than I had since, university, kind of binge drinking, that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was very much that permission to just let everything go.
And we have worked that, so everybody knows this is now part of our basic self-care. We're like checking in with each other. Like, it's been too long since we've watched Bachelor in Bachelor in Paradise, and drank non-alcoholic beverages together. Yeah. We need to get on that. Let's make that happen. Oh my.
Yeah. So I mean, that was my. This started with, how was your summer?
Yeah. Right. Well, I mean,
those were some highlights.
Highlights, right? Yeah. So yeah, I found this summer, I mean, it's gone by really quickly. I mean, it's been good. And, I'm very, obviously really grateful for it being summer and all of that. And for us being, relatively safe and healthy where we are in our part of the world, in terms of COVID, but it was also disappointing. I really expected and hoped that we would have less restrictions than we have this summer. I was hoping that we could travel as a family again. And we actually went through this whole process. So it's my 20th wedding anniversary at the beginning of September. By the time this airs, I will have already had my anniversary, and I'm also turning 50 in a week. And our plan had always been that we would celebrate our joint 50th birthdays and our wedding anniversary in Paris, which is where we celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary. And it's kind of a special city for us. We've been there a few times. And so we didn't think it was going to happen for a long time. And then we started getting our hopes up that it might happen. And we actually went through the process a couple of weeks ago of like scoping it all out. My husband figured out some flights. We had, I'd gone on and found like a really great Airbnb that had enough, like it had all these bedrooms. And I thought, this is amazing. What a steal of a deal. Why is this so inexpensive? And we didn't actually book it, but we had a plan to book it the next day. And we were going to actually surprise my mom because it's her 75th birthday. We were going to surprise her with a ticket to come with us. And neither my husband or I slept all night that night. And we woke up the next morning and Rob just looked at me and said, I did not sleep last night. And I said, neither did I. I'm just feeling so anxious about the possibility of traveling right now to Europe. And so we collectively decided we're not going, and did not book it. And instead, we are going to Shetty Camp, which, as my husband says, for anyone listening to this podcast who has no idea what Shetty Camp is a very, very small fishing town in Cape Breton, which is an absolutely gorgeous part of the world, by the way. It's Cape Breton and the Cabot Trail, spectacular. So I am not complaining about that, but it is definitely not Paris. But as my husband says, it's the closest we're going to get to France anytime this year. So now I'm going to Shetty Camp. I'm going to do a little whale watching. My mom's coming with us. Also not going to Paris. So I guess this summer has been good, but it was also a little disappointing. I did get a break from work, which was nice. It's been an incredibly busy year for me during this pandemic. which again, I'm very grateful for, because I know that's not the case for many people. But for me, it was a very busy year, and I did finally get a little bit of downtime. Things kind of relaxed a little bit. And of course they're ramping back up now because we're getting back into the fall, but overall it was pretty good. Can't complain.
Well, just a sec, Wendy, I wanted to add that, in the vein of some of the things that we've talked about around finding the things that give you joy in menopause, I recently have taken up tennis again, and I am ecstatic.
That was a very loud exclamation. Sorry for that. I was just so excited for you.
I know, right? So I've had this foot injury for 3 years, and it hasn't really, it's taken a very long time to heal, and it's feeling more resilient. Let's just say it's not quite healed, but it's feeling more resilient now, whether that's because I did some hormone work, or whether it's because of time, or I actually rested it like the sports medicine doc said I should. Anyways, regardless, I started playing tennis again with my son, and I could feel that joy coming back, that the joyful movement, and the just rediscovering something that, like, I took tennis lessons from the time I was 4 until probably 20, and then life happens and you play tennis once in a while, and I have not really played in 20 years, and it feels so good to find that thing again.
That's
awesome. Just to really reconnect with that, and that feels really positive in terms of that moving through into menopause and really like carving out time for yourself. I'm going to take some lessons this fall, and my husband and I are actually, because the kids are old enough, we can leave them at home, and we've stopped fighting with the idea of, you guys should come with us and get some exercise, and this whole drama that we were fighting with for the last year, and just going and doing it ourselves, which is helping us reconnect and, kind of find our lives again outside of having kids and the things that we enjoy to do. So that's sort of another success in the menopause transition. It's like,
that's a big deal.
So yeah, it feels like a really big deal.
Yeah. I mean, your face, people, you can't see Sarah's face right now unless you're watching this on YouTube, but Sarah's face is really lighting up here as she's talking about this, which is so fantastic. I'm glad that you are able to do that again. It's so hard when you're injured and you can't do the thing. I had plantar fasciitis for almost a year once, and it was just so demoralizing. So I'm glad that you're starting to feel better. One of the things we wanted to talk about today, I mean, this is really just kind of a catch up for us and for anybody who's, really missed us desperately in the 1 month that we took off the podcast. So I made the decision to take August off of Bite Size Balance, and I'm going to do that going forward so that I always have a month where I'm not actively having to be managing the podcast. But one of the things we wanted to do was just catch people up on what's happening with our own journeys, experiences, transitions, whatever, hormonally, because we, of course, talked a lot about that in season 1. If you're new to the podcast this year, I really encourage you to go back and listen to the many episodes that Sarah and I recorded around a variety of issues related to women's burnout, perimenopause, menopause, and the connection between stress and menopause. And then we did one episode in particular that I think would be a great one for everyone to listen to if you want to kind of get up to speed on us. And that is the Menoversary episode, where we celebrated our joint Menoversaries, or technically, really, we celebrated our 1 day of menopause, which is the day 12 months after your last period is technically menopause. And it's really just 1 day. And then after that, you're in postmenopause. So we celebrated our Menoversaries in a special episode because we happen to have Menoversaries that are just a couple of weeks apart, although then Sarah had a surprise period after that. So
yeah, we can talk about that.
But I thought what we would do is just kind of catch people up as to like what is happening, because I'm still very much actively managing. Again, I've called 2020/2021 MOVID because I've been trying to manage the stresses of the pandemic, like everybody else also have been thrown into menopause, postmenopause, I guess. Very, very sudden transition for me. Not really a transition at all, just a sudden change and a whole bunch of symptoms that came along with that. So I want to just update people on what I've learned and where I am now and how I'm managing that and what's improved and all the rest of it. And I know Sarah has been going through a bunch of stuff too and trying some different things. So why don't we start with you, Sarah? What's your, maybe like for people who did not hear the Meniversary episode, maybe just sort of summarize your timeline chronology and what's happened.
Okay, so I probably had perimenopausal symptoms for 5 years at least before my period started to change. I went, I think 5 months, and then I had a stressful event and got a period. And then I went another 5 months, and then the first COVID lockdown happened, which was stressful, as we all know. And I got a period then. Then I had 2 or 3 more periods. And then I started the countdown to a year. And then I think it was April 1st, maybe even April Fool's Day. I had a
Wouldn't that be ironic?
Yeah, I know. I had my last, or I went 12 months. So that was my 12-month anniversary and or menoversary. And so I thought I was completely in the clear, although I still do have night sweats, but it's sort of dependent on how much to be honest, I'm not the best patient. I'm good at what I do for other people, and sometimes I just forget to do the stuff for myself, which I think is pretty typical of lots of healthcare providers. So if I'm really on it and taking all my stuff and doing my creams and whatever, then I'm pretty good. But we also don't have a heat pump air conditioner in our house, so the heat makes it a bit more challenging. But anyways, that aside, so about 2 months maybe after I had my menoversary, I got a full-on period. You should have seen the text that went between Wendy and I.
Yeah,
like, what the fuck is happening? Basically, I was so angry.
It was a full circle WTF moment. She was not happy at all. And what was the explanation? Like, share what you
so there's 2 possible reasons. One is the COVID shot. So I had a COVID shot a month before, and what we're finding with women is that it can affect your period within the next month. Why that is, there's lots of theories. One is that it's a stress response. So as I said before, when my periods were starting to change, they would come back with stressors. Mm-hmm. And so is it a stress response from having the body have to, manage this vaccine and actually like adapt to it and go and have the immune response? There's also a question about whether it is increasing estrogen, like having an estrogen spike as a result, and nobody really knows. And I think that this is starting to become widespread information, but I'm not 100%. And I think it's pretty important that women know that.
Yeah, I saw something on it the other day somewhere in social media, and I thought, this is the first time I had seen somebody talk. It was a doctor talking about it. So
so I don't think anybody really knows why yet, but it's doing all sorts of crazy things to women's cycles, which there's a lot of fear around that, and I can feel that as well. But I also found myself explaining to a patient the other day that, like, I don't know about you, but certainly lots of women in my practice and myself, like, if you travel, it can mess up your period. If you have a stressor, it can mess up your period. If you have, if you're sick, if you have a period of time where you're sick or you're exercising too much or you're not eating enough, or like all of those things, the period is a way that the female body gives us feedback and information, right, about how it's doing. And so it's not surprising to me that it's messing with women's cycles. I think that if it was a long-term change, I would be more concerned, but it seems to be limited to just that month. I can't, and again, like, nobody really knows why, and how dangerous it is. I don't know, but I'm hoping that it's really just a stress response.
And you did not have the same thing happen when you had your second shot, right?
I did not. No.
Yeah. And I did not have this happen, by the way, to everybody out there. And Sarah and I have both been double vaccinated. And by no means are we suggesting that people should not get vaccinated. That's not.
No, I'm just trying to explain that.
Yeah, this is just something that's happening, and it's not happening. It's not widespread. It's not happening to, I don't know anyone other than Sarah for whom this has happened to, but it's definitely happening because I've seen anecdotal evidence out there. And Sarah has been investigating it, a little bit. Yeah.
And then the other theory was that I had just upped my estrogen dose. So I had been gradually sort of weaning onto the hormone replacement that I was going to take, the bioidentical hormone replacement that I was going to take for some night sweats and hot flashes, but also to see if it would help my foot. Mm-hmm. And I think I'd been doing in that process for 2 or 3 months, and I think I had just doubled that estrogen dose. Now, my prescriber, my friend, told me that she didn't feel like I was on enough to have that create a period. But I tend to be pretty hormone sensitive, so we don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that since we're talking about the menopausal experience, I can tell you that when I was on the hormone replacement, which I've just really gone back on because I wanted to give it a break just in case. When I was on it, my brain was much clearer, and I didn't even know how inefficient it was. That was what was really interesting, because I knew I'd been at a loss for words, at a loss for, being able to name things, calling everything a thingy. That's been going on for years, and it generally can be worse in perimenopause. But I was managing at one point while I was on the BHRT, the bioidentical hormone replacement. I was managing to be clear and fairly organized about. I had a lot of ducks swimming around, and they were all kind of in a row, right? I was multitasking in ways that I didn't feel like I would have been able to do a year ago. I was really balancing all of these things: the book, the WTF, the podcast, the work, my kids' camp, like all of those things. I was on fire a little bit. Now, I did burn out from that a little bit, but because that's what happens. You're like, yeah, I'm Superwoman, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm not Superwoman anymore. That's okay. give me a non-alcoholic G&T and put me in front of Love Island, and they'll be good. But yeah, so that's where I am at. So right now I'm just sort of getting back on those hormones to see if that dose is going to give me another period, or whether it was vaccine related. I don't know that we'll ever know. I'm okay with that. Yeah, some nights I do still have the occasional wicked hot night sweat.
Yeah. Okay. So you're still in experiment mode there around and you're taking bioidentical hormone therapy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have been negotiating. So my story, just really quick, is that I was just kind of sailing through perimenopause, to be honest, with hardly any symptoms. The only symptom I ever really had, other than meno rage, which I have talked about in many episodes, and I'm not going to go into again, but basically just not being able to control my temper. Other than that, I was having night sweats a couple days before my periods in the last few years of perimenopause. However, when I stopped drinking 3.5 years ago, those night sweats disappeared, and I just didn't have them anymore. So I think that those were being triggered by red wine, and obviously also like cyclically with what was going on with my hormones. Anyway, perimenopause was actually pretty good for me. And then what happened was, and I really wasn't skipping periods. I think I missed maybe 3 periods in the course of the last couple of years before I just stopped getting periods. So not one of those people for whom the gap started getting bigger and bigger between cycles, which is, I think, more typical. Instead, I just skipped like a period here, a period there, just a few times. And then last May 2020, I guess May 2020, May 1st, I had my last period, and I didn't have a period May, didn't have one April, I didn't have one June, I guess. And then July 1st, I just suddenly was so symptomatic. So I had, noticed immediately that I was sweating all the time at night, and my night sweats were really severe, and sometimes up to like 10 different night sweat episodes a night where I was just fully hot and sweaty. I had to take everything off, all the covers off, cool myself down, try to get back to sleep. It was really, really disruptive of my sleep. That went on for a few weeks. And then finally I went to see Sarah because I knew Sarah because I worked at Sarah's naturopathic, the clinic that Sarah works at. I had worked there a few years ago, knew Sarah just, as a colleague. But I did know that she had a reputation as being a really fantastic practitioner in women's hormonal issues and perimenopause and menopause. And I had a feeling, I just had a gut feeling, or as my BFF to be, Glennon Doyle, who doesn't know she's my BFF yet, but Glennon, my friend.
She's my BFF, stop. She can't be both of our BFFs.
She can totally come to our Love Island nights though and have drinkers. She's also alcohol free. She can come and drink non-alcoholic drinks with us.
She could be part of the coven.
Anyway, the coven, yeah, she'd be perfect for the coven. Anyway, she calls it the knowing. And I think this is a great example of the knowing, like when you just know something. And I knew I was not ever going to get another period again. I just knew I was in a different place hormonally. I could feel it in my body, but it was also emotional. I could feel that shift. So I went to see Sarah and I said, I'm in menopause. And Sarah was very gracious and said, okay. But also said, well, you need to be 12 months period free before you're officially in menopause. And, there's a pretty good chance you'll get another period. And I said, no, I don't think so. I feel very confident. And one of the things that I loved about Sarah, and I think this is one of the main reasons why I kept seeing Sarah, trusted Sarah, and had brought Sarah onto this podcast and eventually became good friends with Sarah, is that Sarah believed me when I said that. She actually paid attention to the intuition that I had, and she validated it and said, no, I mean, if you really feel that way, then there's a pretty good chance that's where you are. And I think that's a value to me as a clinician, which I thought was really interesting because normally the way you feel is not of much value. So I loved that. So we had a conversation in her office that day. She basically told me I wasn't nuts. She explained to me what was going on. We talked, she said, look, you don't need to feel this way like this, because I had not slept. By the time I saw Sarah, I don't think I had slept in a month. And I was losing my marbles because you can't think properly when you're sleep deprived. I was trying to work. I was finishing a certification and I just had no brain power left. Anyway, Sarah said, you don't have to feel this way. And there are things we can do. And we started trying to manage some of these symptoms. Now, in the beginning, I started with some natural, I guess we'll call them natural herbals.
You started with some herbs.
Some herbs. Those worked for a short period of time. Yeah, some herbs for sure.
Herbs or herbs? I don't know what the proper way to say it is.
But it didn't last for forever, and my symptoms persisted, came back, and then we tried a bunch of different things. For a while, I was on a maca supplement, which there have been studies around the maca that indicate that it can be very helpful to some women with menopausal symptoms, but you have to take it for a long time before it starts working. So I kind of had to commit to that. It did help. It alleviated the symptoms a little bit, but it never solved the problem. And then eventually they started getting worse. And that's when I started exploring other options because I also noticed some other symptoms. So aside from the night sweats and sleep disruption, and I was having hot flashes or flushes during the day, I was also noticing that I was having real difficulty keeping it together at the end of the day mentally. I was just losing my train of thought and just having trouble focusing. I was having joint pain, like quite extreme joint pain that I had not had before, and which, as Sarah and I have talked about on other episodes, can absolutely be connected to decrease in estrogen. And I was having what is called am I going to get it right this time, Sarah? GSM?
Yeah.
GSM, which stands for what, Sarah?
Genitourinary symptoms of menopause.
Okay.
Or syndrome. I get that wrong every time. Syndrome of menopause, which is urinary tract involvement, vaginal tissue involvement.
It's so mostly. For me, basically just dryness, which led to pain and discomfort. So I had a bunch of stuff going on, and I felt like my quality of life was not great. And I was also having a hard time managing my mood again because I was so tired all the time. So I decided to explore other options and got a referral to see a doctor who actually prescribes hormone therapy, bioidentical hormone therapy, and started trying that. So I came off of the maca, and I've been doing that now since, I don't know when I started it. It took me a while to actually start it. I feel like I held off for a while. I was really terrified of it. I was very underinformed. So this is something that has been part of my education in the last year. And this is something that we focus on in our joint program that Sarah and I run together called WTF, which we are not going to talk about in great detail today, but we will talk about in another episode. But we talk about, in that program, we talk about the misinformation and the lack of information and discussion and conversation around hormone therapy as a viable mode of treatment for some women for these symptoms. So I was afraid of it, but I did finally, after doing a ton of research myself, got to a different place with it, and also lots of conversations with Sarah, and decided to start trying it. And I've gone through a few iterations. It's probably been 3 months or so since I started it. The first, I started at a very low dose, which is, I think, the recommended way to go about this. You start low and then you change it if you need it to change, if that doesn't seem to be resolving the symptoms. So I've been slowly increasing it, just increased it again this month. And I will say, I don't even want to say this out loud, because every time I say it out loud, I jinx myself, but I'm going to anyway. Last couple of nights have been significantly better with the increased dose that I'm on now. So hopefully I'm at that point. I will say I have noticed I'm clearer and I'm sharper. So I think, as Sarah said, like, I definitely noticed that. I also rarely have hot flashes or flushes during the day. So that hardly ever happens to me anymore. It was happening a lot before, where I'd have to like take all my clothes off and I would turn bright red when I was talking to a client on a Zoom call. That's kind of over. And my sleep is better with the combination of estrogen and progesterone that I'm taking. I'm noticing that I'm just able to get back to sleep faster. And now, thank goodness, I think I'm starting to notice that the night sweats are decreasing. So I feel like and also the joint pain has reduced. So I have noticed a difference there. It's not nearly as acute and obvious as it was in, like this time a year ago. So I'm happy with where I am with it, but it continues to be a work in progress. And I see a doctor for the prescription of the bioidentical hormone therapy. I see my GP who does some of the stuff with me, and I see Sarah. So this was one of the things that Sarah and I wanted to talk about, because we were having a conversation offline about this, and we both kind of said at the same time, we should be talking about this problem on the podcast, because this is a piece of that missing conversation. And that is the piecemeal nature of care for women in our country anyway, which is Canada, but I suspect this is going on in other places as well. And we would love to hear from you, by the way, if you've had an experience in this area, or you have, anything you want to share with us or questions for us. We're always interested in feedback and in your take and perspective on these issues, because that informs the guests that we bring on the podcast, and it informs the conversations that we have, and also the programming that we offer. So here, anyway, in Canada, it's so piecemeal. There's no holistic model of care for women in midlife. And this is something that's become patently obvious to me in the last year. Why do you think that is, Sarah? Like, what's going on there? Well, do you agree with me, first of all? Like, do you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's compounded for us in the province that we live in, because I am not licensed to prescribe hormones. Naturopathic doctors in other provinces, not all of them, but in some of the other provinces, are allowed to prescribe, which means that they can have the better comprehensive care around hormone replacement and other things. We also can't order blood work. I can do it privately. I just can't do it through the system. So I think your experience in our province in Nova Scotia is informed by the fact that your choice of healthcare providers, if me as a primary healthcare provider in your life, my hands are tied.
Right.
And so I can't actually do the things that I want to do. So I have to refer out for a number of those things. That's not always the
Let me
case.
just interrupt you for
However,
a second, because even if it wasn't you that I was considered to be, which I do, by the way, so Sarah is my primary provider when it comes to hormonal stuff, because she's the person in my life who knows the most about this from what I can ascertain. But so even if it wasn't you, Sarah, it would be my GP, and my GP is not up to snuff on this stuff. She does not like, and I'm not suggesting it. This is like her fault or a shortcoming. I just think that the nature of the education that she has gotten and the practice that she has does not allow her to be in any way a specialist in this area. So she's deferring to everybody else because she doesn't know either. So, and she really is my primary care practitioner in our system as my GP. Yeah. So there's that.
So it's really problematic. It's so multifactorial. Is that, they don't have enough time to engage the whole story, to look at joint pain as related to headaches, as related to sleep disruption, as related to depression, as related to, they don't have the time to take all of those symptoms and try and find a root cause. That's one of the biggest problems, is the lack of time. Also because conventional medicine tends to be very segregated in the way that it's taught. So joint pain is something different from a mood disorder, for example. Right. And so those two things, if nobody's looking for a root cause to link them together, which I'm not saying that this doesn't actually happen in the conventional system. It's just that there just isn't the time for that level of exploration. Mm-hmm. And I know that we have a problem here with physicians really only having 10 minutes and sort of 1 to 2 symptoms that they can cover. And so if you come in with this laundry list of perimenopausal and menopausal symptoms, it is hard to see the cause. And so that is one of the reasons, time. And then also there's just such a lack of information on perimenopause. So we have protocols in conventional medicine for menopause, right? So, if your periods are gone and you're not sleeping, and if you're having hot flashes, then we have a list of medications that can work. So, that can be anything from an SSRI, like an antidepressant medication, to some women take blood pressure meds for that, and others take hormone replacement. So it's pretty clear if you're in menopause. If you're not in menopause and you're in that 7 to 10 years beforehand and you're symptomatic, quite often it doesn't get picked up as a perimenopausal issue. It gets picked up as whatever the symptom is being prescribed for. So hence sleeping pills and antidepressants and pain meds for joint pain. And there just is not, the dialogue around perimenopause is not happening. It's happening way more than it did in our parents' generation, but it's just really the number of women, and we found this in the WTF program, the number of women who have no idea that these things are all connected astounds me every single day. I'm constantly amazed.
Yeah, I agree with you. And again, when we talk about the WTF program, we're talking about the Women Talking Frankly program. Sarah and I launched a pilot of that. It ran about a month ago. We will be running it again in October, and we're going to do a separate episode where we talk more about what we learned in that program, which was fascinating. And I absolutely agree with you, Sarah, but I also want to say that I don't think even in menopause, so even once you're officially, you've met those marks and you're at 12 months post your last period and you're having hot flashes or whatever, and they're throwing you into the category of a postmenopausal woman, I don't think that and by they, I mean, like, I guess the conventional medical system, I think that a lot of the symptoms do not get connected to hormones still. So I think you're still, I agree. Yeah. Even when you're menopausal, it's like, not like people are, at least in my experience, the practitioners that I've met with, nobody has said to me, oh, hey, maybe the reason why you're having such trouble with your neck and your knees and your whatever is because your estrogen is dropping as a result of menopause. Like, there's that connection. You're the only person who ever suggested that to me. I've never heard that anywhere. And I've been struggling with increasing levels of joint discomfort for years, leading up to this. And in the last year, it's been quite acute. So I think there are lots of places where there's tons of room for improvement here in terms of, it seems to me like a symptomology based approach as opposed to a holistic
whole person
root cause kind of approach. And I understand why that is the system, but it's very, in my opinion, it's very broken, and it is not serving women in midlife very well, because I also need to go. So my GP is not comfortable prescribing hormone therapy, which I understand and respect her for, because she doesn't have she doesn't have the training or she doesn't feel like she's got what she needs to do that properly. So I'm glad she's not prescribing it. But then I have to find another doctor who will prescribe that. So, and here we're in our city where we live, there's really just one person who does that. But as far as I can tell, maybe there are a couple others, but there aren't. My point is, it's not an easy thing for a woman to find. And so I actually have now like 3 different people supporting me. I have you. Well, that's not even true, because we're going to talk about something else that I have now too. So I have you as my naturopathic doctor. I have my GP who prescribes. She is the one who she prescribes the topical estrogen, vaginal estrogen. I guess I don't know whether it's called topical, but she prescribes that. And then I have Dr. Gold, who is a specialist in women's hormones, and she prescribes the bioidentical hormone therapy for me. So the cream that I actually put on my arms with the estrogen and the progesterone. So I've got 3 different people. And then now, I don't think we're not going to get into this on this podcast. We are going to talk about it on the subsequent episode that we're going to tape after this one, record after this one. I also am now meeting with a pelvic floor physiotherapist who is, that's just started. So I don't have a lot of information on that. I've only met with her once, but I was amazed at what I learned from my initial conversation with her about the connection between some of the symptoms that I'm feeling and my pelvic floor health. And anyway, it was just fascinating to me, but she is also now involved in helping me try to sort all of this stuff out. So it feels to me, as the patient, on the patient end of this thing, very frustrating.
Yeah.
Because, when I get, and especially with everybody in the system, everyone's really way too busy. So the patient load is way too high. So if something's not working for me, I can't just call Dr. Gold, the hormone prescriber, and say, I don't think this is the right dose. Can we meet and try to figure out how to change this? She's not available because she's just far too busy. And so I'm left kind of floundering, wondering if I should just change it myself. I'm like talking to whoever I can who might have some information on it, but it really does feel like you're kind of out there bobbing around in the ocean by yourself, trying to figure this stuff out. That's how it's felt to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's a symptom of a broken system. It's a symptom of a system that doesn't see people in a holistic way necessarily, a whole person.
Is it not also, though, can we not also call it what it is, which is a symptom of the patriarchal
Yeah, I was getting there, Wendy.
Okay, sorry. I can't, I'm too excited. I'm frothing here.
Gently moving in that direction. I didn't want to come out guns blaring.
Oh my God.
Love that t-shirt. I think you sent it to me, that t-shirt. On Wednesdays we destroy the patriarchy, something like that.
Sarah and we're going to get, so we usually record on Friday. It's a Friday that we're recording it. I'm going to get us t-shirts made that say on Fridays we destroy the patriarchy.
Yeah. So, I mean, but women's health has been a problem since time immemorial, really. I mean, the endocrine system was discovered in the early 20th century, and then everything got blamed on women's hormones.
Right.
And so, I mean, that's where that's where the idea of hysteria and hysterectomy and, all of this stuff. So women get roundly dismissed in the conventional medical system, and there's not enough research as well on women's bodies in particular, and how all the symptoms can be related, and how they can all be sort of treated in a more whole person way. It's just not happening. And I'll take that back. It is starting to happen.
Yeah.
We saw that TED talk by Dr. Lisa Mosconi about the brain and menopause, and so women are really starting to do this research, but it's just, there's just been a void of it for so long, or it's been dismissed. I mean, I read a quote today. I think it was in the Guardian. Anyways, it was a journalist talking to possibly a physician. I can't remember. Anyways, the point was that they were talking about how women's health has been roundly dismissed over the years, and the quote was from a male GP who had said, I've never seen a fibromyalgia patient who wasn't batshit crazy. That just says it all.
Wow.
And women with, just to go back to hormones, women with endometriosis are the ones who experience this in a really acute way in the medical system, is that your incredible pelvic pain is because it's in your head.
Right.
It's hysterical, if you will.
Right.
And because there's no acknowledgement that women's bodies are different and not inferior, right? It's just that they're different, but that doesn't make them less.
Right. This is really interesting. So I'm reading right now. I got a couple books on the go. So funny. If you were to look at like what I was reading 2 years ago this time versus what I'm reading now. So I always have something light on the go for my own mental health, but I'm also reading Dr. Jen Gunter's book called The Menopause Manifesto. I think I have that right. And then the other one is Estrogen Matters. And those two books are both very interesting, different takes and approaches on things. But this concept is explored in different ways, what we're talking about right now. And it's, I don't know, I've lost my train of thought in terms of what I was specifically going to say here, but everything that you're talking about, this whole idea of like the hysteria and all of that. Oh, I remember now. This moment is brought to you by menopause. I don't remember what I was going to say.
You're back on track, Wendy.
Oh my God, no, because then I lose it again. Now I'm like, wait a second, well, what was I going to say? But you were talking about how historically women's, how this has been seen almost like as a deficiency in women, the fact that in women's bodies, you know, the assumption that we should be the same as men or whatever. Anyway, this is explored in one of those two books, I think maybe the Manifesto, in an interesting way, where she goes through the history of all of this. And the idea used to be, or probably still is in some places, is that, you know, menopause is basically the fact that our sex hormones decline before men's do has just basically been seen as a weakness in our species, right? So men, you know, technically can still reproduce up to a, you know, I don't know what age.
Scarily long.
Hugh Hefner age, right?
Yeah.
It is scary. Whereas women cannot after the age of the onset of menopause, which is the average age of that is around 51 or 52. So it's interesting to me that, and then the argument is being made in this book for how it's actually a strength and not a weakness, which is very fascinating to me. I mean, both of these books are really interesting, and I'm learning lots from them, and I want to talk about them more on the podcast as we go forward. But today we just really wanted to touch on, because we haven't really talked about my experience in the system in kind of, and put it all together. We've talked about it in little pieces here and there. And I just wanted to kind of summarize, like, this is what it looks like. I basically have 4 different people right now that I rely on to help me navigate through this and sleep through the night and, you know, not be in pain and, you know, all of the other things. And it's frustrating. It's a frustrating system.
And you're somebody who actively knows to seek out this team, who actively knows to seek out the literature, who actively knows who's actually reading.
I'm a woman of great privilege. I'm white. I am, you know, financially stable. I'm educated. Like I think I probably have every advantage available out there. And so I would suspect that I'm like doing the best at negotiating this system.
Right.
So I can only imagine how frustrating this is if you're not having the level of success that I've been having with it, and you're not able, it's not easy for you. You don't know where to go or what. And listen, we just did this WTF program with huge group of women from all different backgrounds, all very with it women. And most of them have no idea where to start.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the only reason really why I have been able to get this team in place is because I met you. I would never have known. I wouldn't have known about Dr. Gold. I didn't know what to ask my GP. I mean, you were the person who said, this is what you need to go ask your GP for. And so I went and did that. And my GP said, well, I can do this for you, but I can't do that for you. And then I went back to you and I said, well, what am I supposed to do now? And you said, well, unfortunately, I can't prescribe what I think you probably need. And so you're going to need to go talk to this person. And then I was able to get on a wait list for that person and eventually get in to see that person. And then you're the person who said to me, like, maybe your sciatica and is connected to your GSM is connected to your estrogen, like, and you should maybe go see a pelvic floor physiotherapist. I mean, I think I have been very lucky is really the summary of this. I've been very lucky. I was lucky to meet you, and I've been lucky to have gotten engaged in a conversation with you, because what you and I have learned together over the last year, I mean, I've mostly learned, let's get real. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff before I met you, really. But I think you've probably seen a different perspective of it through my lens and the women that I work with. But what I've learned over the last year has been incredibly empowering for me, and has set me up to be able, in part at least, it's one of the factors that set me up to be able to access this care that I have, as piecemeal as it is. And I want to, this is why I'm so passionate about continuing to have you be a regular guest on this podcast and continuing to work with you to get information out there. I mean, we have some big plans for this year, and we are going to end this episode in a second because we're getting close to our hour cutoff where we just cut ourselves off. It's like a hard line for us, because otherwise we keep talking for hours. But we are going to talk about what we learned through that program and some of the ideas that we have for things that we think will be really beneficial and interesting for women, that we can do together. But we want to continue this conversation because this is such a big piece of that missing conversation that is not happening out there for women. So we're going to lead by sharing our own personal experience through this, like we did today. We're going to keep talking. I'm going to keep talking about how hormone therapy is going for me, what's happening with that, what other new things I'm learning. And Sarah will do the same. And we also are very committed to bringing interesting women onto this podcast to fill in the gaps in the conversation that the two of us can't do ourselves, because Lord knows we don't know very much in the grand scheme of things about all of this. There's so many other moving parts in this. So we have, we're very much hoping to be speaking to a specialist from the University of British Columbia about the connection between hormones and menopause and women's libido, which I think is going to be a really interesting conversation. So Sarah and I are setting that up as an interview and a podcast episode this year. We are going to be speaking to a very exceptional women's pelvic floor physiotherapist together to talk about those connections. And we have another woman who's doing some pretty incredibly interesting work, I think, in the United States around menopausal women in the corporate workforce. And I think that if that conversation happens, it's going to be a fascinating one. But we really have lots of ideas for things we want to talk about. And we've got a whole list of topics that we decided we want to talk about on this podcast together, as well as we go forward into season 2. So did I forget anything there, Sarah? Obvious that you wanted to say, or that?
No, well, I just wanted to say that for the women who are nodding their heads and feeling frustrated around their current medical care, first of all, you have to advocate for yourself. You need to do some research, talk to other women, find out if listen to our podcasts, find out the questions to ask, bring those questions to your doctor, and don't leave until they answer those questions for you or can find you someone who can. Because they don't have the time, and some of them don't have the expertise to be able to answer the questions before you've asked them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's really important. And I would suggest that if you do not have access to naturopathic care or any sort of secondary alternative care, I would seek out your sexual health clinic wherever you live, as a starting place, as a landing place, and to talk to the doctors there, because they are very knowledgeable, and this is what they do all the time. And so, they also do younger women's sexual health, but they would certainly know how to address the things that you have to talk about, and hopefully what direction to point you back in, and maybe help you with some of the questions that you need to ask. I mean, that's part of the starting place. It's not even knowing what questions to ask, and also feeling embarrassed or uncertain about whether these things are all related.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that they probably are. And if you're over 45 and you're having some of these symptoms, they're probably all connected.
Yeah.
And so to really go in and advocate for yourself. And I know that's hard, but nobody's going to do it for you, unfortunately.
Yeah, but we're here to try to help you do that. We really are. And this podcast is really about that. It's about helping you get empowered and informed so that you can go and advocate for yourself. We can't provide advice on this podcast, but we can help you get started in getting the information and the support that you need and that you deserve. And so we will be continuing this conversation. We do promise that. And of course, the WTF program that we just ran for the first time this year, and that we are going to be running again a couple more times this year, because it was a huge success. And we're going to talk about that on the next episode. But that program is also designed to help fill in these gaps for you and to provide you the information that you need to, first of all, get a handle on what it is that's actually going on with you, and get some clarity around that, and be able to articulate that for the healthcare provider that you go see. And secondly, to know what to ask for when you go, and to get some confidence around the fact that you're not alone in this. This is totally normal, and that you do deserve and you are entitled to some support for it. So
we could do a whole podcast on that. What to ask. Okay,
we will. So we'll probably do a podcast on this, apparently. But for now, I'm actually calling this a hard boundary on this, because we're done. But we will be back with another episode soon, where we talk about all of the great things that we learned in the pilot of the WTF program, and also talking about some of the great questions that we got from participants that we discussed, and some of the things that the biggest takeaways and learnings for us as coaches, and also for the participants. So that is coming up in a future episode. So that's it. Season 2 is officially kicked off. Thank you for joining us. And as always, we absolutely appreciate you. And this podcast would not be here if it wasn't for you guys. So if you're not already subscribed, go and subscribe. And we would absolutely love it if you would go and give us a review or a rating. You can do that on iTunes. Just go click the star. There's a star rating, but you can also give us a little text review, which we very much appreciate. It helps us to get great guests on the show if we have good reviews. We've already got a great little library of reviews there, but we would love to keep building it this season. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
Hi there. If today's episode has got you wondering where you are in your own hormonal journey, you'll want to download our perimenopause checklist now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. This free checklist is the first step to getting informed and taking back some control over your midlife. Get yours now at wendymccallum.com/peri checklist. That's PERICHECKLIST.